Hello, everyone. I'd like to call a meeting to order for the Planning Commission on Tuesday, March 18th at 5:30. I'd like to read a land acknowledgement. The land that we know as Sequim was once inhabited solely by First Peoples known as the Sklallam people, represented by 3 tribal governments, Lower Elwha Sklallam, Jamestown Sklallam, and Port Gamble Sklallam. We serve as stewards of the land within the city of Sequim with the same care and consideration of the Sklallam tribes has and continues to provide. This acknowledgement is a respect to the Sklallam people and their history. The Planning Commission serves as an advisory body to the City Council. The purpose of the Planning Commission is to provide guidance and direction for Sequim future growth through continued review and improvement to Sequim's comprehensive plan, zoning code, shoreline management, environment protection, and related land use documents. The Planning Commission will have all the powers and perform each and all the duties specified by Chapter 35A.63 RCW as amended and set forth or amended by Ordinance 2009-036 and 1 and Ordinance 2009-030, Ordinance 311 to 1974. So we could have a roll call, please, Emily?
Yes, Commissioners Coons and Mihalik are excused. So I'll just note that for the record. And we'll start off with Commissioner Cummings.
Here.
Commissioner Fain. Commissioner Hewitt.
Present.
And Commissioner LaPever.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Thank you. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Okay. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes of our regular session, February 4th, 2025. Anybody have any questions about the minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
A second?
Second.
Any objections to approval of the minutes? Hearing none, they're approved. So now we have public comment. General public comment will be heard at this time. Each person is limited to 3 minutes. For those wishing to speak on the public hearing topics, please hold those comments until that portion of the meeting. Are you gonna? We have one person in the audience.
Push any buttons, you say? Okay. My name is Ronald Dale Fairclough. I've been a resident of Sequim more than 50 years. I discovered Sequim in 1946 or 1956. And I graduated from high school in Renton in 1957. I actually discovered Sequim in between my junior and senior year of high school. And I fell in love with Sequim and wanted to come to Sequim. And as time went on, it worked out that I did. I went to a lot of things happened. I went to dental tech school and became a regular certified dental technician. And then I came to Sequim and I attempted to establish a business here. I knew that a dental technician wasn't going to get rich because he was a dental technician. My plan was to build a dental clinic. And when I first came here, Dr. Lang and Dr. Johnson offered me the opportunity to come, and they built the clinic that's over next to the bank over there. And then I was in the clinic working, but then I wanted to establish a regular dental clinic, not just with 2 dentists, but with a half a dozen dentists. And I attempted to buy the property, which is now a parking lot. And I had some problems with the lady that owned it. In fact, just yesterday, I went out to where her old house has been moved. It's just out the other side of Dunlap deal, and it got moved there. But what happened was Dr. Harris came and bought the church building, so he needed to buy that lot for parking. So that meant the end of my opportunity to build my dental clinic on that property. But basically in just prior to 1975, I had bought my property 153 West Bruce. And I actually asked, on my birthday's on July the 5th, and I asked our mayor, Oliver Hamilton, did I make a mistake buying property next to the city hall? And he says, oh no, my boy, we're gonna grow. That was in 1975. Okay. So then I attempted from the lady that owned the lot 161 had actually owned the lot over there where the dental clinic was. And Mrs. Jones. Anyway, I made a deal with her when not with her, but when she died. So in 1980, I bought the 161. So then I attempted, and I could have bought 171 anytime, but I attempted to buy 169 so that I could build my dental clinic on all 4 lots. As it turned out, the person that owned 169 actually worked for the city. But I kept offering her top dollar for her property, always. Then when she died in 2008, her husband called me up and told me that he would give me 30 days. Otherwise, he would put it on the market. Well, naturally, my last offer to them was 140. So I paid them 140. That was back in 2008. Okay. Now we move on to what's happened most recently. You know how much the city gave me per lot? You know, any of you? You ought to know, 150. And that's after they basically burnt down my dental lab. The police department knows who set my place on fire. They know, and because his girlfriend went and told the investigator that we have here in the city. And the reason that he did it with a Molotov cocktail. So he set it on fire. So now the police know this, but they haven't done nothing to him. He's split and living in, I don't know where, in some eastern state. But that's where I stand. I am not happy with the way things have turned out. And my belief has gotten really strong because I believe the Planning Commission has a whole lot to do with my problems. And I also am going to ask you a question. You know, there's a street over here named Maple Street. Maple Street ends, more or less, on 4th. But then it resumes on 5th and goes to 7th. How come the Planning Commission hasn't made some sort of deal and got something done about connecting up that street? Isn't that a project that the Planning Commission should be working on? Or is it going to be the city who is telling the Planning Commission what to do? No way. The Planning Commission should be telling the city what to do. And then on top of that, the council. The council should be a yay or nay situation. They should say, yes, we can, or no, we can't. But the Planning Commission should be the outfit that is making the plans for what's going to happen in the city. And there's ways to do that. There's ways to gather information for that. It shouldn't be from the tribe. It shouldn't be from somebody else that's moved here and bought a bunch of land or anything like that. It should be the Planning Commission, which is making the decisions and directions for what's going to happen in the city. And I can tell you how to gather the information in different ways. Like I said, I was Science Club president back in Renton. You know who owns the property over there between 4th and 5th? Lester Ellis. Lester Ellis happened to be the Science Club president here in Sequim the same years that I was Science Club president in Renton. Why isn't it you sit down, have him come in and have a discussion and see why can't you work out some sort of deal to get that street connected up? That's something that should be happening. And I can get you more. I can get more details on things that should be happening. Knocked down some clips. So anyway, I can get you more information on how to do that. One of the things that you should do as commissioners, you should take a group that divide the school kids up and divide them in groups and be educating them on the politics and the happenings in the town. And then you gather information from them, how and what you would like to happen in the town. And then if somebody comes in from somewhere else, like what is always happening here, somebody from California, they would have to kind of butter up, get it friendly with the young people. The young people should be the ones deciding what's going to happen in their town, not somebody from Timbuktu or other place. And that's what you should be doing. You should be educating all of the students and everything on what could happen, and they would be informing you on what they would believe should happen.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for those good ideas and your input. And the planning department's available if you have questions.
The planning department is run by the city.
Yes, it is.
It shouldn't be. You should be running. The people that are the planning commission should be running not only, and here's what I believe on that. First off, you should have the longest terms. You should have a 4-year term. Then we should have an elected mayor with a 3-year term. And then we do have the city council with 2-year terms.
Okay.
So that's the way it ought to function.
Okay.
The city council is just a yay or nay. They should be telling you, yes, we can, or no, we can't.
Right.
But the planning commission should be presenting what should be happening in the town and gathering its information from the real citizens of the town,
Okay.
the young people.
Thank you very much for your input.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk out here.
Yeah.
All right. Next on the agenda, where is the agenda here? Got through the minutes. Okay. Submission of the Municipal Code Amendment, Chapter 8.36. Oh, well, we'll wait for. Since it's such a thick document, we should. In pretty colors, blue and red. So do we do the public hearing on this before or after the presentation for the flood damage?
I think we open it first, open the
Okay.
hearing, and then we'll present on it. And then I think and then we'll go from there. Yeah. and then
Okay.
Public comment. And yeah.
The people first? Okay.
Soon, the chair of the Planning Commission will open a public hearing. When the chair asks if there are any members of the public who wish to speak, those who would like to speak should use the tool in Teams to raise their hand, or if you're participating by telephone, should press *9. When you are notified that it's your turn to speak, unmute your audio by clicking the microphone icon or by dialing *6, then state your name and your city or county of residence. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, and I will let you know when it is time to stop speaking. Please avoid comments not related to the subject of the hearing. Participants will be disconnected after speaking.
The subject of this public hearing is SMC Amendment Chapter 8.36, Flood Damage Prevention. The public hearing is now open. There's nobody in the audience. Is there anybody online?
We do have one person whom I don't recognize. Marion, are you here to speak on this public comment, or are you just here to listen?
So if there's no testimony, then we close the public hearing? Is that
No, keep it open for our, I think, for our
For your-
presentation.
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, you want to go through this line of
Okay.
questioning, and then then we'll close it after.
Does the DCD staff have testimony to present us?
We do. All right. So before we get going, I just want to make sure, did you guys all get the revisions today?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
And I'll kind of touch on those a little bit, but what you should have gotten is you've got the draft amendments, and I believe the existing changes originally are now in red, and then the new ones that came today were in blue. So if you have any questions about that, then, but just to get going, basically, what are we doing? So the city of Sequim and participates in the National Flood Insurance Program, and as part of that, we have to update our code accordingly when we get recommendations from FEMA, and so that is what is going on. FEMA has contacted us and let us know, hey, it's time to update these things in order to stay in good standing with the NFIP. So we are proposing some changes based on those recommendations from FEMA, almost verbatim. And so what we've got is kind of the mandatory minimum, if you will. So there are mandatory things that we had to update, things including base flood elevations, development standards, and permitting requirements. But the goal of this is to retain flood insurance, the availability for flood insurance for Sequim residents in the event that they may need it. So that you'll see the changes to 8.36 accordingly. And where this is applicable, there's a new flood map that you've got as part of your documents that shows kind of where the areas are most impacted. We have to do this in order to stay in good standing by April 23rd. So we're kind of, we're doing this rather towards the end here rather quickly. But yeah, the reason why is it's required by FEMA for us to update these in order to stay in good standing so that our residents have the availability to apply if needed. So that is kind of the gist of what we've done. And if you've got any questions about what you've looked at, I would happy to answer those as best that I possibly can. So yeah, I mean, fire away.
Any questions from the planning commission?
Yeah, thanks for your hard work on this, Travis.
And I'll give Ethan Walker, our associate planner, a lot of credit because he worked directly with FEMA in drafting that. So shout out to Ethan. So
All right, sounds good.
yeah.
The question I had was, has this been reviewed by ecology as well, the floodplain folks at
and
Kayla Eichert's or whoever?
Yeah, and we also had to send it to Commerce as well, so it does get reviewed by the Department of Commerce, so they at least know that this is going on. And so then FEMA as well has reviewed the updates that we've proposed, and so that was actually the revisions you got today were based on comments and feedback that we got from FEMA based on the draft. So
Okay, good.
and yeah, and ecology was part of it.
And
as well.
due to my ignorance, we're not in the Puget Sound watershed technically, are we? I hope not,
I don't think
because
so.
that brings in a whole variety of issues with the biological
Yeah.
opinion and the ESA stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't think we are.
Yeah. I know we're in the
Okay.
WNS part. Yeah. But I don't believe so.
I don't believe so either. Yeah. Thank you.
But I can certainly double check that. So
Well, FEMA will tell you.
yeah, that's probably very true. So,
Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Again, Travis, thank you very much for all the hard work and everybody else behind the scenes. I have a couple of things that I noted that I'll just hand to you
Okay.
that might be referencing issues. So I'll hand those to you after this, at the end of the meeting, just some numerics. And then again, to restate, this will put us in full compliance with the FEMA requirements.
correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to confirm.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a large scale map? Even printing these maps out at 8.5 by 11,
Yeah.
I couldn't get an idea of where our V zones are. And also in the definitions, it didn't really explain like a V1 through 30. Is that like 1 through 30 foot elevation above some river bed? Or when it's not high tide, I didn't see the V zones described
Right.
really well.
Okay, and that's
Thanks.
we can look into that. I'm pretty sure the definitions we got came straight from FEMA, and so we can, if you'd like to expand on them, we can take a look at that if you'd prefer it. But as far as the definitions that have been provided, they were just it's from the guidance we got. So here, let me.
Oh, okay.
But yes, we have the large maps available in a big printout, and then also the Clallam County map has actually put the FEMA layer on it. So if you go onto the multi-purpose map, you can actually add the layer onto it and see exactly where it's at. So
Okay,
So, yeah.
there's nothing right here that we could
we've
look
got a
at.
big one upstairs.
Oh,
but yeah,
upstairs. I see. Okay.
yeah, we
Okay.
do have it on
Great.
file. Yeah.
Okay. There's all sorts of little typos and things. Are you going to be proofreading it in the meantime? Like on page, well, let's see, I've got 3 choices of page numbers. If you go on the bottom right, page 18 of 71. Oh, pardon? Oh, that's the packet. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay. Like instead of, it says of instead of or, things like that. That would,
Yeah. If if you've got that.
yeah,
kind of
I'll
similar,
show you. Okay.
Go ahead. And,
And then, do you know offhand if something is determined to be in one of the V zones in some sort of peril more than other places in flood zones, is that a required disclosure when selling the property?
I would imagine so. I know that it's something that we're going to look at for development purposes. So I would really hope that that is something that's disclosed when they're going to purchase the property. So
Okay.
yeah, I would imagine so.
And in Minnesota, where there's basements everywhere, almost by law, and certainly by tradition, there's besides the requirements for small openings in basements so water could flow through. Actually, in Minnesota, you have to have egress windows that people can escape basements from. And I didn't see that here. So this is like a lesser spec for safety or evacuation, which would also be handy in a time of fire as well.
Yeah, and I know
as
that
flood.
we have requirements in the building code for at least having 2 points. I believe it's 2 points of egress for all dwelling units, so that there's at least.
Oh, in basements? Oh, good. So that's covered another way. And of course, the city itself has very little seafront property that is just John Wayne Marina, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. Nothing, very little that's applicable for this. It's in our local area. This is mostly county land. Do they have similar, a similar FEMA flood
Yeah, so I
thing for
believe
their?
Port Angeles, the county, and Sequim are all part of the same NFIP. So we all have to do kind of the similar dance, if you will, in order to stay in good standing so that all residents can have access to the flood insurance.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So all our neighbors in adjoining lands will
Yeah.
be facing the same thing. So we understand
Yeah, they should
their
be doing
situation.
it just as we are.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and just kind of there were, because as you pointed out, I mean, the bulk of where we see on the flood map is along Bell Creek. And so some of the non-mandatory things that we looked at and we discussed as a staff were some provisions for replacement of like farmhouses in a floodway or even substantially damaged residences in floodway. And just based on the map and where residences are, coupled with, our already existing non-conforming structures codes, or if, a home is voluntarily or is damaged and acts of nature included is already in the code, as there's ways you can rebuild. So we didn't include those as they weren't mandatory. And we felt that with other codes that we had in place, we were going to be okay. And just the lack of, those historic or those protected farmhouses per the RCW, there wasn't really the means for us or the need for us to need to adopt those ones with the other codes we already have. So
Is Mapleview Farm outside of city limits?
is that located?
Mapleview? Well,
Not ringing a bell. So
okay. Well, that's the big dairy that kind of on the way to Port Williams. They were to take Schmuck
So I think
Road
that's
and drive
probably
around.
where like a WRF facility.
Yes.
Yeah. So I believe it is outside city limits. I know that
Okay.
the WRF property or building location is in.
Is it on 189
Oh,
Coulter?
yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's in the UGA, but not included in. Yeah.
I see. So if there is certain elevation above sea level that's puts them in jeopardy, they would have to have a sanctuary area for the cattle if it applied to them.
Right.
That was interesting to see. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have one more. You mentioned the community rating system. Is the city part of that system already?
The community.
Rating system
Rating.
through FEMA, which allows.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're a part of it already.
Okay.
And hence the need for us to update. It's by having the code, I'd be hard pressed to assume that we weren't, unless we were just trying to, cover our bases ourselves. But
yeah, there's a separate application process, I believe, through FEMA that they check their boxes, and then if we are eligible, we become a community rated system. And then through this type of update, we can actually get a reduction in the annual premiums for flood zones.
I'll follow up on that and just double check, and then if I can, maybe we'll send you guys something by the end of this week.
Yeah, it's just more for my information than anything. Thank you.
Anything more? Okay. So do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
Not looking like it.
Pretty quiet out here. Okay. I will now close the public hearing. Thank you, everyone who provided information and comments. Is there any planning commission
And I don't, I think looks like we're getting close there, but did you guys all get the modified motion as well? I gave you, okay, cool. Emily's giving thumbs up. So thank you. Just wanted to be sure.
bonus points? Bonus points. So is there any more discussion with the planning commission about this revision?
Yeah, my last thing was for variances criteria. It mentioned in considering variance applications. I was curious if it was going to be an administrative decision or how transparent it would be, but it does mention the hearing examiner must consider all technical evaluations. So
Yep.
I guess it's outside of our hands or staff hands in a way that
That's
hearing
correct.
examiner determines
Yeah,
variances.
which is consistent with how we do variances for all other things. So yep,
Okay.
just kind of keeping it the same.
Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
Are we ready for a motion?
I move to waive the second touch on this matter and recommend that the city council adopt the FEMA flood code amendments as proposed and edits as provided by FEMA and presented at tonight's public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, raise their hand. Any opposed? They hiding under the tables. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Travis, for all the information and get it done. Okay, next up is the comprehensive plan update and workshop. Karla Boughton, our consultant extraordinaire, is going to share information with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I am Karla Boughton with Crosstown Consulting, and I was joining your meeting online in January to give you a quick update on the comprehensive plan. And I'm back tonight in person, which is always my preference, to also give you an update on the comprehensive plan and to spend a little bit of time on doing like a preference workshop, a housing preference workshop. And so we're excited about Travis will be here helping with that as well. And while Emily gets my PowerPoint up, so thank you so much for, she's going to be driving for me. I do not do well with Teams. Anyway, what I will be going through a few slides and then we will take some time and do like I said, a housing preference workshop. And so with that, I want to just give you a little bit of update of who I am. I know that Christina introduced me to y'all in January, but I wanted to just let you know that I, even though I'm a land use consultant, I am work for myself. I'm sole business, and I primarily do what I am doing here with the city Sequim, which is kind of is a adjunct or embedded planner with the planning staff. Primarily because I've spent 25 years as a municipal planner myself, and my heart is in municipal planning. So I am here representing the planning department and working in tandem with the planning department. You do have a large full service consulting firm, SCJ, that I'm sure you met members of last year during the public engagement, and they are doing the bulk of the work with the comprehensive plan. But what Christina has me doing is helping with the city coordination and ensuring that the things that need to get done on the city side are getting accomplished and getting done, and also project managing SCJ. So that's my role in the comprehensive plan, but I also am here 2 days a week. And so I'm familiar, I work with all members of the planning department on planning issues. So I work with Travis and Ethan slightly on the FEMA floodplain update, as well as any other things that come up. So it's really been my pleasure to be here at the City of Sequim for the last 2 months, and I'm happy to continue to be working with the staff and with you all on the comprehensive plan. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started with a couple of introductory slides. If you had a chance, go ahead for the next slide. So this will be, again, a comprehensive plan update in a housing workshop. So thank you. So if I understand that you've been provided the video link to the City Council retreat, and I know that I think, Alex, you even were there in attendance. Is that right? Am I remembering that right? Yep. For some of it, and I know that some of you have watched it, so thank you very much. So some of these slides are going to be what was in that slideshow. And primarily, I think you recall that we wanted it to be a joint planning commission and city council retreat. And just based on availability, we weren't able to have all the members of the planning commission there. But truly, it was our intent to have both the bodies working together and going through the retreat. And so we decided to do the exercise that we did in the afternoon session at tonight's meeting, so that your input could be incorporated in a line folded into the input we received from the city council. So I'll start off by just walking high level here. Here is our 2025 work plan, super high level. We are still in quarter one, so we're still working on a number of technical work that needs to get done for the comprehensive plan. The housing needs assessment is near its end. It is not posted on the website. We still have some technical work that is hopefully going to get wrapped by the end of the month. We will be providing the growth forecast to the Public Works Department so they can begin work on the transportation plan and the wastewater plan for those growth to accommodate and incorporate the growth forecasts. And then SCJ will be beginning the drafting of the goals and policies for each of the elements. So they have been provided a work plan from the city that gives them date certain deadlines for different elements, and so we will be working with them to get their deliverables. Then I won't necessarily go through each of the quarters here. As you will see, each one builds upon the work, and we will be looking at releasing the comprehensive plan in late summer to begin its public review, and then culminating in the public hearing process in the fourth quarter. And then the critical areas ordinance will be, and then development regulations will also be worked on in quarter three, and they will then be folded into the public hearing process with the Planning Commission and the City Council. The Growth Management Act does allow for an additional year to work on your critical area ordinance without penalty, and so we are planning to take advantage of that additional time. So next slide. So I want to, I know that I talked a little bit about the growth forecast at our January meeting, but I do have a little bit more details than. So I do want to spend a little bit of time, and this really is what it's all about. The Growth Management Act establishes that counties will receive a growth forecast for a 20-year planning period, and then the counties will distribute that number to itself as well as incorporated cities. And so Clallam County did spend a number of time in 2024 working on that distribution in coordination with all of the cities. And so where it ends up is that a percentage was assigned to the city of Sequim of 31% and the Sequim UGA of 5%. And so what that results in is this planning series, periodic update series under GMA is really focused on housing units and a little bit less than population than perhaps in past updates. So what we are talking about now, and everyone is doing it, it's not just Sequim or Clallam County, is housing units. So Clallam County has adopted through an ordinance or a resolution that was adopted at the end of November that city will be planning for 1,850 new housing units within the city limits, and then just noting the Sequim UGA, although Clallam County is obviously the lead in those, it's 298 new housing units for the Sequim UGA. And so I wanted to make a note about, which I typically like to do when we talk about growth allocations, is that these are for the purposes of the Growth Management Act. This is so that jurisdictions are prepared and plan for growth. But this is not something that the city itself creates. Actual growth is market driven and is influenced by regional, state, and global influences and economic forces. And so while this is the growth that we will be planning for, it is not a guarantee that this is what's going to happen, nor is it a ceiling. It may be that we experience more growth. So I do like to note that. Next slide here. But what what we're going to see here on this slide is what really is the big ticket item for this year's comprehensive plan update, and I should say this round. For the 2024 jurisdictions, we are a 2025 jurisdiction, and then there are 2026 jurisdictions. The state legislature has been very busy, you might have heard, and they have passed a suite of housing bills that relate to the Growth Management Act for the past 3 to 4 years. And one of them that is the most relevant to the work we're doing right now is that that housing unit allocation, that 1,850, has to be distributed by income band. And I put the purpose statement there. This is straight from the Washington State Department of Commerce, and that the state law, or the state legislature, has determined that that removing barriers for both affordable and supportive housing, incentivize the construction of a diverse housing types, and to provide support to local jurisdictions. And so those numbers that are highlighted there on the top, that is the distribution of housing units by income band. And PSH means permanent supportive housing. And these numbers were derived by using a very complex Excel spreadsheet with formulas built in by the State Department of Commerce, and was coordinated by Clallam County Department of Community Development. And so these really were not negotiated numbers, in the sense that Clallam County and the cities did not negotiate these numbers. There was 3 methodologies to choose from Commerce. They called it method A, B, and C. Method C was chosen, and it is the appropriate method to use for more rural counties. And so Jefferson County was using method C as well as other more rural counties. And so these are the numbers that we must plan for, and remove barriers if our barriers are identified. So I wanted to note this, because this is important, that when you look at that table and you look at how much of that 1850 is in the lower income band, and you think, well, how in the world is that going to happen? And what I want to note, a couple things. First of all, the Department of Commerce understands that these are aspirational numbers, and that, again, using the methodology from Commerce and as directed by the state legislature. So as I mentioned, this was a methodology that we had no say in, no contribution to. But I want to point out, and this is the second bullet on the slide, that it's not the city's responsibility to provide or facilitate development of these housing units. Our role is to remove regulatory barriers, ensure densities can be achieved if a developer, a nonprofit, a housing authority wants to build it. So our role is to plan for it and to accommodate it. In this last slide here, and what that means is we're evaluating existing land use densities and housing types, and we're going to be adjusting them as necessary. So I want to speak really briefly. I think I've got just 2 slides here on land capacity analysis. This is one of the first technical steps that we do in any comprehensive plan update. We're still immersed in LCA work right now, in tandem with SCJ's subconsultant, Leland Consulting, and also Clallam County DCD. But the land capacity analysis is what it sounds like. It's an analysis of all vacant and underutilized land in the city limits that can be available for future development. And it's a exercise that starts off most comprehensive planning process, but this year, this periodic cycle, we're looking at it in the context of housing, which again is something new. But LCAs are a mathematical analysis that considers land developability, and there's assumptions that are based upon that. And we have, again, guidance from Commerce. But I'm going to skip down to the bottom of the slide here, where Commerce requires that certain housing densities and types to meet the housing units by income band for 80% or less. So if you remember that slide that had the table there where we had all those numbers that were 80% or less, so it was like 50 to 80, 30 to 50, 0 to 30. That's the bulk of where our numbers are allocated. I'll note the reason for that is because Department of Commerce has determined that for the very low and low income, that they must be located in urban areas, and that's for services and for transit. And so Clallam County does not get very many of those 50% or less. It will be the city of Port Angeles and the city of Sequim took each they took the bulk of it. City of Forks was assigned some of it as well, but the bulk of those numbers went to, and they were divided evenly between the city of Port Angeles and the city of Sequim. And so, so in addition to the fact that we have to take most of that income band, and again, for the purposes of that services are available, transit is more readily available. They also are assigned different housing. Those households in that income band are assigned housing unit types. And those are the last bullet points there, the moderate density, low-rise multifamily, mid-rise multifamily, and ADUs. And again, these are defined by the Washington State Department of Commerce, and they are allocated by income band. So for example, ADUs in middle housing unit types are going to be the 50 to 80 or 80 to 100%. In moderate density will be from 80 or above. The low rise multifamily and the mid rise multifamily are going to fit all income bands, especially and in particular the 50% or 30%, the 0 to 30%. So again, the Commerce is telling us what type of housing units we need to plan for and to accommodate, and they're telling us how many of the household distribution of where they're going to go for housing types. Now, for those of you who might have done GMA planning in the past, this might feel very different than the bottoms-up approach that was promised in 1990 when the Growth Management Act was adopted, and I would say, yes, that is true. So this, we have received more guidance and direction from the state legislature on land use planning ever since the initiation of the Growth Management Act. And if you recall, this is mostly because they have a deep concern about what they consider as a housing crisis and a housing shortage. And so they determined that being more direct to local jurisdictions is their method of approach. In addition to the housing, the future or housing needs by income band, you also are probably aware of a suite of amendments that we'll be having to make to our development regulations regarding other housing types like ADUs, co-living, unit lot subdivisions, and those will be things that we'll be working on this year as well, and those are directives from the state legislature as well. So they have been very busy, and they have consequently resulted in jurisdictions being very busy in updating housing as part of their comprehensive plan, as well as the development regulations. So I think before I move on to the next slide, which is going to be changing the topic slightly, I just want to pause and see if you have any questions, because I guess gave you a lot of information, and a lot of it is new from what comprehensive planning updates in the past have looked like. So just thought I'd see if you have any questions. If not, we can move on.
Yes, is Clallam County AMI really 93,900 and something area median income?
It is, yes.
That seems higher than I would have thought. Is that household income?
It is, yes. Thank you. So that came up at the council retreat, and appreciate you raising it because it is household. It's for a family of four, but it is real. That is the real number for a family of four for Clallam County AMI. Yes.
So we've got half above and half below. Any idea of what the average is? Because our high earners would kind of skew the average.
They do.
Up,
yep.
You know.
I do not have it in front of me. The housing needs assessment that we're very close to being done and being able to release publicly has all that type of data. So it's going to have the AMI, but it's also going to have what the average household income is, as well as average household size, and it will be all City of Sequim specific information, but there are comparisons to Clallam County and then to Washington State. So again, we've been working with SCJ and Leland to get that finished up. We're very close, not quite. It will, but yes, that will have that data that you're looking for.
Oh, thank you. Anybody? I have one more, but I'll defer to someone else first. Okay, thank you. So is the urban land in that's optimal for low income residents for availability of public services easily, will that be preserved for low income development rather than first come first serve on use of land, but for whatever income target?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The answer is no, it was not preserved. So it's still, housing is still market driven. Again, remember the slide before, our job as the City of Sequim is to remove barriers, ensure densities and housing types. The providers of the low income are nonprofits, housing authorities, and we can provide incentives in our development regulations for private developers. I understand your question, and that's one of the things that is coming out of, and again, the 2024 jurisdictions were the I-5 corridor, the King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Kitsap counties. They were all 2024 jurisdictions, and those are questions like, okay, we're supposed to plan for these income bands. How do we ensure the land is available for that? And that is where the market and planning and planning have to kind of sort it out, because we're not setting aside land. We're ensuring that our development regulations are updated to allow for the densities that Commerce has determined are necessary to support that income band.
Okay. And I'll defer to anyone else.
I do.
Go ahead.
Thanks for all this. And so I'm hearing all of this discussion and mandates that the communities, the cities have to provide and be ready for and plan ahead for, these bands of income for housing. Is the legislature working with any of the building associations and the contractors to help educate them about what this is? And so, because that's got to be a cooperative deal.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I can say that I would believe so, but I can't say I know for sure what's happening on the private sector side. I think that's a really good point. I will, for way of excuse, say that we are so busy dealing with the public sector side of what the state legislature has done, but it's not a invalid question. So we certainly can see if we can understand what discussions have been happening with like the Home Builders Association and the state legislature, because that is exactly right. Like, other than nonprofit organizations like your local Habitat for Humanity or, housing authorities in some of the other counties, like those are the two nonprofits, and housing authorities will be the providers, especially of the deeply affordable or the lower incomes. They have to be, because it's in order to financially, support this housing, it must be subsidized.
Now, I don't know, I don't remember if this came up in the council discussion, but there are permitting requirements where we could say X number of units need to be a certain income band. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's called inclusionary zoning, and it was raised as a potential technique at the city council retreat. It has been around for many years, for decades actually. It has mixed results, to be honest with you, but it is something that, for actually when I started my career in planning, inclusionary zoning was one of the things, one component of a master's degree thesis I did, and it was all the rage. And then it tapered off because it was very difficult to implement. You almost had to have it had to have its own department or agency to manage the inclusionary zoning. It was too much for one jurisdiction to manage. And so the most successful example of that was called ARCH, which I can't remember what the acronym stands, but it's over for Bellevue. It was for Bellevue, Kirkland, Issaquah, that area there. And they're still around, and they administer the inclusionary zoning for that area, but that has tapered down. It has come back up as techniques. I believe the city of Redmond is looking into that. I think the city of Everett is. Again, it's administrative heavy on the jurisdiction, but it is a technique that you can use, and it is built into your development code, and it does require I realize I didn't explain it. What it does require is that developers do provide long-term units for long-term affordability in any development, and again, because builders are going to come and build and leave, the responsibility for the administration of those units falls on the jurisdiction or an agency. The other, which I don't believe is applicable for Sequim, but the other technique that's being talked about quite a bit is MFTE, which is called a multifamily tax exemption program. And the state legislature did provide some amendments to that, expanding the program and expanding it for long-term affordability units. And so the successful MFTE programs are in the larger cities. So City of Tacoma is very successful with it. City of Everett's been very successful with it. And what that does is it's a tax incentive to build basically large-scale, tall, multifamily complexes where a certain percentage of the units are in long-term affordable housing, affordable rent.
The other thing we talked about, and I don't remember who was in your role at the time, we talked about several cities, and I think even the state now is trying to address the short-term rental challenge and how that's taking inventory out. Is that something that we will be looking at as part of this whole process?
Well, to be honest, I hadn't thought about that. There's a lot of other things that need to get done to respond to the state mandates. Certainly, if it's been determined that short-term rentals is a problem for keeping housing stock available for long-term rentals, is something that could be looked at. You are correct that the state legislature is considering some controls over it, or what I know mostly about is that they're looking to tax it, and they're taxing it in a way that they're not going to tax hotels. And so one can look at that as a deterrent to the kind of the Airbnb model for taking accessory dwelling units or even full dwelling units off the market for long-term rentals and allowing them for short-term rentals. So we will talk internally about the short-term rentals, and Travis can brief me on that on previous discussions, and we'll determine whether or not that's something that we should fold into our work this year.
Yes. In looking at the figure of 1850 new homes in Sequim city limits over the next 20 years, that's about 46 homes per year. So Travis, how does that? Are we exceeding that now? Not yet. I see. I said averages it out because these big developments take so long.
Yeah, and so that's part of the analysis of the LCA that we're currently working on. So like we're taking a look at pipeline projects and things so that we can say, okay, because I think the 1850 comes from a 2020. Right. So we'll have to go back and kind of see from 2020, what have we provided? And, we can kind of take those out of the 1850. Now, granted, most of the new homes that are being built in Sequim are probably over that 80% AMI, of course. So we're probably not getting a whole lot taken out of that 1850 yet. But yes, you're correct, as we have a number of pipeline projects in the works. And so that is stuff we're still looking at. So.
Travis, wouldn't you say too that, I mean, just the 2 months I've been here, I've been surprised at how many multifamily pre-apps and interests you've had. So it does appear that there seems to be some market interest in that. And those are the types of units that Commerce wants to see. Is that-
Yeah,
okay.
totally. I mean, it's definitely an increase from what we've seen in the past. So in my 4 or 5 years here, it's more so this year than ever. So, or at least in the last couple of years, I should say.
That's encouraging to hear, because I was wondering if most of this is market driven because we don't have much choice. If the market was saying, well, we want 4 units per acre to be sold for $1 million, and it's first come first serve for whatever land you want to put this on, the land use would not meet those targets whatsoever. And what's to keep that from happening?
There isn't anything right now. There is speculation in the planning world as far as local planners that when numbers start coming out, that the state response will continue to be more mandative. So at this point, they're establishing that we should evaluate our development regulations, we evaluate our densities, we remove barriers, we ensure that we have capacity for those 4 types, moderate density, low rise, multifamily, mid rise, that we have density for those 4 types of housing types, and that then we monitor what happens over the next 5 years, and we have to turn in monitoring reports. It might even be longer than 5 years now that I think about it. And it's honestly part of what we're going to talk about tonight here is got the big pictures here. You also have them in front of you, is that we're going to have to look at housing types and densities at the city that you haven't had to do before. And it doesn't have to be scary, but we do have to do it. And so but that doesn't mean we don't get to still be Sequim, and that you don't get to still have a say in like what types of multiplexes, what types of multifamily, what types of attached housing, and where they make sense to be located. And that's tonight is the first, honestly, first cut at having that discussion. And so, so to your point, Alex, what's going to stop that from happening? I don't know, but what I do hope, and I think this is what what the state legislature hopes, is that by making these changes in our zoning regulations and looking at things that maybe we haven't ever had before, the market will respond. And again, except for that, the 0 to 30%, which is the very, very low income, 30 to 50% incomes can afford triplexes. According to the analysis that Commerce has done, they can afford living in apartments or duplexes and triplexes, that moderate density in the low and mid-rise multifamily. And so making those things available, talking about it, demonstrating to the market that we're going to look at a different way of maybe doing housing than in the past. I think that's their hope, that then the market will respond.
Couple years ago, probably maybe 5 or more, I thought the state designated opportunity zones
Yes.
that created tax advantages for developers. Is that still in force, and is that going to be part of our strategy?
Okay, so yeah, so I was gonna say, I do, yes, I'm aware of that. I actually haven't worked with the jurisdiction that has it, but Travis is telling me we've got one. Is that right?
Our
EROAs.
Kind of established because of that. So it's actually funny you say that, because I actually was reading about that kind of in the last couple of weeks as well. So that's maybe something that we can talk about, because yeah, it was interesting. So.
I think part of the marina parking lot may have a piece. So just as long as you're aware of it, and I think it's an opportunity that I don't know if we put it into our
Right.
comprehensive plan or not, but I think it's
And
an
I-
opportunity.
Yeah, and I think there is some stuff, I believe, on the City of Sequim's website specifically about the economic opportunity zones.
Right.
So I'll take a look, I'll make a note of it, and then we can circle
Okay.
back.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm just doing a quick time check here. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip to 2 slides from now. I'm gonna just briefly, next slide. I'm gonna briefly go over the land use scenarios that SCJ presented last year. So go ahead for the next slide. Thank you, Emily. And I won't spend a lot of time on it because I believe that you all are relatively familiar with these scenarios. I know that SCJ spent some time with y'all last year in a couple meetings and talked about them. I did spend a little bit more time with the city council at their retreat because I wasn't quite sure how many of them attended the workshops. And so, but this is the overall growth plan. And there was 3 scenarios presented by SCJ last year. And so the first one was what they call status quo, which is pretty much keeping the current land use zoning as is. But I will note, which I note at the bottom of each of the slides, the little bullet that says, regardless of the scenario, we need to address housing by income band requirements. So next slide. The scenario 2, which was the downtown emphasis, which was looking at concentrating density in mixed use buildings in the downtown area. It's allowing for taller buildings to achieve increased densities and to have it within it will require an update to the existing downtown sub-area plan. The commercial character elsewhere on Washington would remain as is, and the rest of the city would remain low density. But again, we would need to address the housing by income bands. And the next slide is the scenario 3, which is the Washington corridor node. So it's kind of more of a dispersion method for increased density along Washington Street and nodes. And these are anticipating redevelopment of the commercial areas that may be experiencing vacancies and allowing for densities maybe on the edges of Washington Street on the east and west side, and maybe not so much within the downtown core. And again, we still would need to address housing income bands. So next slide. So I know I went over those relatively quickly, but the next 2 slides will just kind of summarize where those scenarios are. So scenario 1, the comments that we heard at last year's workshops, and then the workshop at the Guy Cole Center was that scenario 1 has the potential to be sprawling and presents infrastructure challenges. And again, this is the status quo scenario. Scenario 2 has the potential to be too urban. Definitely would need to increase building heights to perhaps an uncomfortable level for the downtown area in order to accommodate the housing needs, and that would have results in some ancillary, parking constraints and congestion. And so scenario 3 might be the right balance to take advantage of existing infrastructure, retain and enhance downtown, and provide opportunities for different housing types. And those kind of value statements that are in there came from the September 17th workshop at Guy Cole from comments and from the participants. So next slide. Thank you. So I do want to just conclude on the scenarios before we move into our workshop section of the meeting that any 3 of those scenarios is actually going to meet the housing unit growth allocation. So the LCA, the land capacity analysis does show that the city of Sequim has capacity for the growth allocation of the 1,850 units. We did that based on current zoning, and so it definitely will be refined as we look at different densities and housing types. But each one's going to need to identify the increased opportunities for the multifamily development, as we've just talked about, and all scenarios are going to require following up with development regulations to remove the barriers and improve administration and other updates. And so, and then again, all three will have to address the income ban. So at the retreat, the city council did favor scenario 3, and that was actually the favored scenario from the community workshop that you all probably attended last September. And that's the one that's a little bit more dispersed, perhaps density on the east and west side of Washington Street, taking a look at what opportunities for increased density and heights there, and then ensuring that downtown retains its character without having too many tall-ish buildings. And then we do need to look at, again, the different housing types that can be incorporated in other areas of the city. So next slide. So we're going to, well, actually, before we move into the workshop, do you have any questions about the scenarios? Where we're at with the scenarios is it's a growth strategy that then is going to continue to get further refined as we work through the comprehensive plan and development regulation process. So it's a starting point, and the rest of our work will refine that. So I just thought I'd pause and see if you had any questions on that before we move into workshop. Okay, that's good. So, okay, so now comes, I think, the more fun part, and I get to stop talking, and you guys get to start talking. And so what Travis and I are going to do we're going to help facilitate basically what the afternoon session at the council retreat was. And we're going to introduce, first we're going to introduce what's called middle housing types, which is, so go ahead and go to the next slide, is a variety of attached units that, and I want to speak to this directly about your attention to the zoning map here, which is the R48 zone. So the R48 zone is the yellow, as you guys all probably know pretty well, and it does have the most capacity. So the land capacity analysis has shown that the most vacant and underutilized land in the city where future development can go is the R48 zoning district. And that really shouldn't be a surprise because that is the biggest significant, land area by zoning district. So right now, the R48 allows for up to 4 plexes in the R48 through an administrative conditional use permit. And then you can also incorporate them into the planned residential development, which is like a larger scale subdivision type. What I'd like you to consider tonight is if we had different types of attached housing, if they could go in the R48 or are there other places in the city where they may be more appropriate? And so that's kind of the first exercise. You have in front of you some handouts. You have a 8.5 by 11 that gives you kind of the pictures of all the different housing types. And then you have a worksheet that is like on the screen. And this is my thought, is if you all wanted to take a few minutes to think about these different housing types. It's on the fly. I understand that. And this is really just for us to have a discussion and for you to be thinking about what feels appropriate for Sequim. And then we'll share, then I'll have y'all share with each other. And behind you are larger scale posters of the same documents that you have in front of you if you want to get up and, see it at a larger scale. And then Travis and I will take notes and love to hear what you have to say. And then we will collect these worksheets at the end. You don't have to put your name on it or anything, but we'll scan it in and we'll, keep it and we'll add it to our city council worksheets. And so with that, I'll give you guys a few minutes to just think about these different housing types. Again, this is on the fly kind of preference testing or, talking, and then then you guys can share what your thoughts are. Yes.
I just, so there's a brand new 8-plex being built on Hendrickson. Which one of these would be like that? Real to a picture.
Townhouse.
Okay.
But really, those are, and just to kind of that's in our lifestyle district, so it's allowed there without the ACUP or the administrative conditional use permit. So
Okay.
just as a point of, yeah. But yeah, they are townhomes. They will be condominiumized through a binding site plan. But that's what those are.
Okay,
Oh.
thanks.
That's a good thing to think about because right now the R4A allows the attached units that are allowed there are fourplexes only. No. Yeah, and feel free, like it's not, we don't have to have the cone of silence, but eventually we will all share, y'all will share kind of what your thinking is your, what your preferences are. How are you guys doing? Are you ready to share? Tell me, so I do want to give you each an opportunity to share your thoughts, and we'll start at the end with Larry. And is that right, Larry? Are you Larry? Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
And then what I'd be interested, what we would, yeah, just share your thoughts on preferences. Also, like, was this difficult to do, or was it easy, or anything you want to share? And then also locationally, where do you think attached housing units make sense to be located within the city?
Okay. So first of all, I thought it was easy to do because it's my preference, right?
That's
If I
right.
don't-
That is
If I don't know
true.
my preference,
There you go.
then I got a problem. Then I better get out of this room. I liked all of them with the exception. I didn't like the detached clusters and the courtyard cottage. And, my reasoning for that was just my perception that there was not going to provide the density that the others would. And, it's just, it will provide more density than just single family detached, certainly. As far as where they could go, anywhere in the R4-8 zones. I would even see if we have zones that are just single family zones around places where, the schools and the medical facilities where we might want to change a little bit to add density. Because I think these are really, everywhere I look, the townhome model or the, these twoplex, threeplex, people consider their unit their home. They're looking at them and they're lent upon like a single family. So you get that look and feel, even though you're sharing a wall or maybe sharing two walls if you're pinned in the middle between the other two. So those are just my thoughts, and they're worth exactly what I get paid to do.
Thank you. Dennis.
Well, I agree with a lot what Larry had to say. I actually prefer the scenario 3 where you have the various nodes along Washington, because I think that creates an opportunity for the higher density multifamily dwelling units that I think could be skirted by some of the middle housing types that we have. But I also agree that if we have pretty sound design guidelines for residential structures, most of our middle housing that we are showing here can go in just about any residential zone. And I think that's going to create opportunities, not only for the middle income wage earners, but also would provide the opportunity for the multifamily structures to take that pressure off the downtown, which would maintain our character, which is always a need for us, I think. So those are my thoughts. As far as the multifamily, the higher structures, I guess we're going to be discussing height and, okay, then I'll leave those comments for that section. Or can we deal with that now?
You sure can. And actually, I realized that I had an extra question, so I'm going to say it now. And then, Larry, if you want to loop back at the end to answer it, would you also, related, even though I know we've been talking about this in the context of R48, a question is how do you feel about having a distinctive multifamily zoning district? Because the city doesn't have one like for right now. And so adding a new zoning district, I'm not asking you where it would go, just the idea of should we have a new zoning district that is specifically for multifamily? So, and then Dennis, yes, please carry on with whatever else you want to share.
Yeah. I'll just jump back. I like that idea because I like the idea that if I don't want to live, you don't want to get in the middle of a multifamily zone. You want to be in one of these, what are you calling it? middle housing. If that's what I'm looking for, I know there's not going to be a multifamily that shoots up next to me that might be 3, 4, 5 stories. And I think that gives me a comfort level. I think part of what our current plan is, the status quo, is a little bit freewheeling and creates some problems for some homeowners who have built, and then suddenly, maybe a shopping center goes up between them and the view of the mountains that they had at one point in time. So I like a multifamily zone, just so everybody's on the same page. And hey, this is the zone. It's kind of like, even though the property out by the marina, the John Wayne property, has always been resort, we still hear people complaining about, what do you mean it's not going to be a wildlife preserve? It's been a resort zone that way, and that gives everybody a comfort level, I think. And then as far as height, I know I heard what the council said. I will go as high as possible, but that's just me again. And the reason why is a little side discussion we had. I think we have to talk to developers and say, on a multifamily, a 3-story multifamily doesn't pencil out, so you will never get one, and you will never have the housing for the people in your. So I don't know the answer to how high it should be. I think the smart men and women who do development do, and ratchet them back a little bit, because they're going to push the envelope, right?
Yeah. We can definitely talk about that, because the next exercise we'll be doing is multifamily. And yeah, I've spent a lot of time talking to developers and jurisdictions who've been talking to developers, so I can help provide maybe some context for that. Okay, Dennis, what else do you have on your mind?
Yeah, like a form-based code really doesn't restrict height. I don't believe, but if it's done in a sensitive manner, it can be placed basically in any multifamily zone, which I do agree with. I think because that opens up the opportunity for the MFTEs as well. The other thought I had too, and there's some locations, maybe not necessarily here, where there's underutilized parking spaces in commercial properties that could be, I don't know if they're already existing. I'm thinking QFC, those types of large parking areas that are only filled up maybe twice a year, if ever, that could be redeveloped into some additional multifamily housing, along the arterial, Washington. That just makes good sense, because I think it's serviced by the infrastructure. I think it's serviced by transit. But logistically and economically, I don't know how to approach something like that. But those are just some thoughts that I've had that I've seen in other communities. It's more like a horizontal mixed use type use, instead of having the typical mixed use where you have the residential on top, commercial on the bottom. Spread it out a little bit if you've got the space to do it. So, thank you.
Okay, I have to visualize, I have to see. So I'm thinking of Elk Creek Apartments. And that's 3 stories, maybe?
3 stories.
3 stories. Complex. The location seems to be a good spot. Single family residential is not near that. So it's kind of like it's near the grocery store. And parking, they got their own parking, and capacity is pretty high. I mean, there's quite a few apartments there. So something like that, transposing something like that. Now, where else could that go? And I kind of, it's pretty condensed. A lot of people in a pretty small space, but that we may be there. So I was thinking, in between 101 and the highway, Washington Street and 101, behind the post office there, that's kind of not heavy populated and might have some opportunities there. But my style, I got sidetracked because and I asked you about the townhouses, and those are small. Those are, and I mean, I don't know how they're going to get a sidewalk parking. It's got to be around back. That's pretty, that's kind of like Cedar Ridge development.
Yeah, so those ones they'll all have their own dedicated garages around back with a
Oh,
parking
okay.
space in front of the garage too. So they all are providing 2 spaces per unit for that. So I mean, like, they've got, it's pretty well done for
Yeah.
it's maximizing space, right?
Totally
So,
maximizing space.
yeah, and we were able to avoid doing parking lot requirements, because had we needed to call it a parking lot, then we would have had to take more space to build out, an actual parking lot. So we were able to call it kind of like a drive aisle back to their driveways and their garages, and they've spaced that way so they could get more units.
Yeah, it's been curious watching it go up. But anyway, I digress. I like the townhouses, like what we're just talking. Have you guys drive by and see it sometime? But I also like the courtyard cottage where there's a little green space around. Even up at Cedar Ridge, they're close to each other, but they have a little, yard where they can have grass or whatever. So I think that's important. I think that's part of the ambiance of a home, and dogs, kids, or whatever. I think those are, good things. And I like the scenario 3 up on either side of Washington, not the downtown. I hate to see, we'd have to remove some things downtown, and that I'm hoping I'll be off the planning commission if that comes about. Yeah, you'd have to,
Put in
But-
3 and 4 story.
yeah, apartment. Good luck with that one. But anyway, so those are my choices.
Thank you.
Well, we're kind of spoiled because we have on just a 50 by 90 foot parcel, a 2-car garage, a 15 by 50 foot patio garden in the back, and we still have 50 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and a duplex side by side. That could have been a whole attached row. Then everyone, like you said, has that little area, a little private. You can sit outside. You can get the most of appreciation of the weather, and it's nice for small families too. So I'm a fan of duplexes, or even you can have row, and have a little garden space or patio. I think it's really nice. And one thing to keep in mind, in our little 44 home HOA, maybe 80% are elderly, so that it's single level is really important. You can get in and out with a wheelchair, and you don't have to go up and down stairs. So as we have, I think, something like 20% more people than Port Angeles in the upper ages. So kind of keep them in mind without having to have elevators. I've seen the side court, 2-story detached cluster, I guess, over near Silverhorn Well. And that looked like a nice little place. Well, there's probably a few more around, but and multifamily. In hindsight, if we could go back 30 years, we would have had all the areas around the school, the central school district, be multifamily. And now that's not so easily done. And for the higher buildings on page 2, I guess, around Washington corridor near medical, too, like on 5th, 7th Avenue. 3 stories or whatever. But I did hear the developer saying it doesn't make sense unless it's 4 stories. And so, pardon?
Doesn't pencil out.
Yeah, I've heard that for along Washington Avenue. And so, I don't know how we get it to be affordable.
Okay. So I appreciate all of your comments on the, so the middle housing is the term that is being kind of forwarded recently from the the planning world, and certainly in commerce, says that it's that 50% to maybe 100% income level. And it's kind of where maybe young adults or young families can start off with their home ownership journey, and or your more senior or later phases of life where you are downsizing from a family home. And it's the term for a while was called missing middle housing. They've kind of dropped that term missing, but I think that there's some value in at least acknowledging that these are housing types that are missing in a lot of communities, and Sequim is not unique in that in any way. And so I do think you should take heart in that. What Travis said is that you're seeing the market and developers in the example, Aline, you gave, where you're starting to see interest in these types of housing units, because they're going to be where, our young adults, our kids, as they start off their adulthood life and are ready to purchase a home, that's where they're going to probably have to enter into the housing market. So I really appreciate what I think I heard in general is consistent with what the city council also came to the conclusion is. I think that all of these housing types, they had some preferences too. A few of them didn't like the courtyard cottages or the side court as well. But essentially what they said is we could see any type of these units be in the R48 zoning district with appropriate design. And I heard that from you all as well. And I think that absolutely makes sense. And that is what we should do. So, now having said that, it's not as easy as saying that, but I shouldn't say it's harder than just saying that, but it is good when we know what the road ahead of us is. And I also appreciate your support in a multifamily zoning district as well. Christine and I have been talking a bit about how to tackle the development regulations updates, and they'll probably be kind of in chunks where we'll do a first set, which is all the have-tos. And then the second set will be like, okay, here's all the things that we want to do. We know we want the directions we want to go to. And so that multifamily housing or that multifamily district might not happen till the second phase after we capture all the mandatory requirements that the state legislature has for development regulations. But I do think it's something for us to be thinking about. It's why I raised it, so we could be thinking about what does that look like? Where does that make sense? So I appreciate all your guys' thoughts. So we're going to move to building heights, which is our last slide and exercise for the night. And again, your comments are so important to help Travis and I know how to navigate and set the kind of the priorities for how to accommodate these different density housing types. So I do want to spend a bit of time kind of introducing this workshop. You guys have already made some comments on it, which is great. But, and I see that I have the new multifamily zoning district there on the bottom. So that's good. You can fill that section out. So these are different building types in the sense that they're not all commercial. They are mixed use, or they're going to be all residential. So they're going to be like your multiplex. And and your multiplex apartments or mixed use, which is typically a commercial or non-residential use on the first floor, and then residential uses on floors 2 and above. And we also put on there the current building heights because we wanted you to know what's already on the books right now for what building heights are. And so 45 feet is 4-story, 38 feet is going to be 3-story, and then 55 feet is 5-story-ish. I put that on there because the floors are typically going to be between 9 and 10 feet, and then there's about a 1 to 2 foot space between the next floor. So a 55-foot building would probably barely accommodate a 5-story. It would most likely be a 4-story with maybe a peaked roof that maybe you could fit a loft in there. So if a 5-story building was something that you really felt like we should have the opportunity for a 5-story building somewhere in the city, and right now it's only that height is only in the lifestyle district, it should probably be 60 feet to ensure a full 5-story. And then I know that y'all, Larry brought it up to me, and then you all have talked about like, well, what are developers going to do? Like what is kind of the market and how does the projects pencil out? And so in the past few years, as I've been a consultant, just like I said, I'm just me, but I don't have a big team or anything, but I work with had the opportunity to work with a number of planning departments, and in that they have also asked that question, and these are the 2024 reporting jurisdictions, and they've asked that question with developers, and they've also, a number of them have hired economists. In fact, Leland Consulting Group, who's a sub to SCJ, is actually specializes in these types of studies where they can come in and evaluate and do stakeholder interviews with local developers as well as regional developers and ask them what are the barriers and what is it going to take to pencil out a mixed use building or a multiplex building. But there are some themes that have emerged from my work with other jurisdictions. First of all, the interest rates were a big deal to the developers. And once they found some relief in that, they were able to pencil out projects that honestly a month before they couldn't. So these are things that we have no control over. It is, and again, when I talked about at the beginning that the market is influenced by local, regional, state, and global economic trends. So depending on what the interest rates are for borrowing money, that actually has a lot to do with what type of building and how much a developer can afford. The second piece that I heard a lot, I'm not fond of this answer, but they said it a lot, so I believe it, is parking. And that is a double-edged sword because they basically want no parking standards or very minimal parking standards. And yet when they're done, the jurisdiction, the community is the one that deals with buildings that have no parking. But here's where it's happened. The city of Spokane for their downtown has, it might even be more, but I know for sure for the downtown has adopted regulations for no parking. The city of Everett has no parking in their downtown in their MFTE areas. The city of Bremerton Planning Commission is recommending no parking for downtown Bremerton. Areas are going to try this in my opinion, this experiment of what no parking means. But what they're trying to do is respond to what the developers that they are working with or that they're familiar with, who have told them that parking honestly is that it's that margin between whether a project pencils or not. And then we can refine it even more where that under building parking does not help because under building parking actually costs more. So it really is the requirement for how many parking spaces. Now, I am not here sitting recommending anything about parking. I am answering that question of what developers have been telling us. I personally, as a planner for small communities, which is where my heart and my specialty is that you have to provide parking. in larger areas where transit is option, that is real transit in the sense that people can get where they need to go in a convenient way. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to use the word real, but I mean more frequent and more convenient transit. That's what I meant to say. Where people can decide to walk out their door and get somewhere where they want to go. That's at least as convenient-ish as getting in their own car. That's where they're going to see success. So there is going to be we're going to learn from these jurisdictions about what no parking requirements has. I know that actually, I think the city of Seattle has as well. So for a place like Sequim, what is it going to take for a developer to come in and look at one of our edges of Washington Street or something in like the lifestyle district where we have a building height that can get them, many, many units. So I think it's going to take a couple things. It's going to take, I think there are some standards in the zoning ordinance right now that could be more flexible. I think that we can look at parking. One of the things that that totally makes sense to me as a planner, but I've heard it from a lot of developers, is we really don't like guest parking requirements, and it totally makes sense to me, but it's again adding parking to already trying to figure out how to pencil it out. So I guess with that, I would say that the stories, typically what I've heard in communities that are not a Bellevue, Redmond, Everett, Tacoma, the maximum a developer is going to really build is 5 stories. And that includes Sequim. That is Gig Harbor, that's Paulsbo, that I'm familiar with, that's Bainbridge Island, that's going to be any small to mid-sized community. It's the larger cities where parking really, really can be completely wiped off the table is where they're going to go 6 stories and above. So that's, again, what I've heard in reports that I've read and developers that I've heard speak. Those are the themes that I've heard of in the last 24 months that I can share with you. And so with that, I'll go ahead and stop talking and let you guys think about the building height worksheet that's in front of you. And then again, we have the larger scale behind you if you want to take a look at it. We put a variety of architectural types for you to look at, to also hear if there's some preferences of what you would like to see baked into as design standards for multi-story buildings, because I think that design standards are just as important for those as they are for, attached housing getting embedded into single family zoning districts. Is that it just takes one building to not fit in to change the character, of a small town like Sequim. So really want to give some thought to and these again are just examples. If you have other ideas, certainly feel free to share those. So with that, I'll stop and let you guys ponder.
So just so you guys, I heard you say on the other side of the highway. Currently, just so you know, transit does not serve that side of the highway. So not to say that that can't be improved, but just as a, so on that side, even the new Pingo Link or whatever shuttles won't go over there. You brought up Elk Creek, right? And like you said, you can hardly, because of where it's situated and how the highway is even seemingly above it, right? It doesn't feel like it's that high. So, yeah. I would say contact Nicholas Dosty, our city engineer, and he could probably give you a better answer. But yes, I think that is still very much in the cards. So
So do you want to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I feels like this was a little bit more of a group discussion, which is totally fine. I was just curious if we wanted to still go round robin so that you could share your thoughts so that Travis and I can record them. And I know we're getting close to 2 hours, and I just want to say thank you for your guys' thoughtfulness and your intentionality. This is just one of many nights that we're going to spend together in the next year working on the comprehensive plan. But what you're sharing with Travis and I is really important, and is significant value, because it's how do we incorporate multifamily, mixed use, and attached homes into the fabric of the community that you care about in a way that improves it and not harms it, and that it welcomes new families and new people into your community. So this is important work. It comes around every 10 years, and very happy to be here, helping and being part of it. So with that, maybe we'll start with you, Alex, about your thoughts on building height, architectural design, anything else you want to share about kind of multi-story buildings?
Sure. Well, using the example that just came up of the Holiday Inn, there it's 3 stories or a tad more, and because it's sort of on a slope, the situation is just right, and that. So I think what we're a little afraid of is having a 4-story building in the middle of very flat land that has residential already built around it, where really wouldn't fit in so well as it could where there's a generally rising slope. Like below Miller Road, for instance, to the north of Miller Road, there's a lot of undeveloped land there, kind of where Habitat is going to be building. They're going to be building right close to Brownfield Road, but there's other along there, of course. Is that the city limits? Outside of city limits? Anyway, so. Anyway, we see really good examples of 3-story buildings all around. So, and like the Vintage, well, the way it's positioned across from Costco, it doesn't stick out at all. You could have many more of those in that similar sort of location in it, and it wouldn't really bother anyone's views or take away from the character of the town, I don't think. That's about all I have to say.
Okay, yes.
I think with the multifamily zoning district, that would be carefully designed and picked, and that would kind of take care of problems of a taller building in an area. I mean, Elk Creek, I mean, they are packed. They have a waiting list. I mean, it's unbelievable that, I mean, so we need to encourage more of that. I don't know who owns that, but they were smart to make that there. So yeah, I don't think we should go more than 3 stories. Just because of our views and our mountains and neighbors and, but
Or is that citywide?
I'd say citywide.
Okay.
And, so if we, there's this thing in my history of this kind of work, it's something called spot zones, where you just even just carve it out of something else. Can we do that here in the city, or is that kind of no? And if we've got, our lifestyle district, that they need to give up some of that. That needs to change. But there's probably little pockets of places that we could do that if it's not, but anyway. I think, of course, it would be better to, carefully place any new zoning and do that. But I think that could be the answer to direction and guidance and informing the community about the plans for encouraging families to move here and live here and work here.
Thank you.
I don't know. I'm kind of mixed between, and again, I'm thinking the modes in along Washington, where we could, definitely do 4, 5. I think any structure can be well done and look fine if it has the landscaping and if the parking is dealt with sufficiently. I mean, parking can be a real drawback, as you had well noted, to any development. It can be an eyesore. It can just be a land eater. It can really be a nightmare. But landscaping goes hand in hand with any nice structure. I mean, look at the Vintage. That has the landscaping that's grown in nicely over the years, that has provided the ambiance and the character of that structure. So as far as exactly what height, I don't, I'm kind of mixed. I think we could go 4 or 5. I mean, if you go 4, what's 5? I mean, it's just, another 12 feet or whatever. It's, but if the grounds are done well, landscaped, provide the pedestrian ambiance and, pathways, who knows, a little pond, a gazebo, night lighting, that type of thing. That's what a development should do. Yeah.
All right, Larry, bring us home.
Quick here. So obviously we're in the city, the multifamily could go any of those growth clusters, because the whole point of developing those clusters was to get the density into those clusters. I like the heights we already have. I wouldn't necessarily shorten any of them. I would maybe increase. I know the city council would like the center core to be lower, which obviously that's you got to do what they're going to pass. But I'm okay with the 4 or 5-ish stories. Those seem to work. I think, I would target the opportunity zones where we have those, because there may be some value to the builder, developer. And as we talked about just kind of briefly, if we could develop the zone that way so it doesn't block the views of, it doesn't create, kind of a crazy odd look. But, overall, I think we're all on the right track here, and you guys are going to find the right spot. So, and I know Travis, I appreciate what you said about the commuting. Some of the multifamily people may be higher end people, especially if they have a view of the valley. A lot of people have like a vacation place out here, right? And they're just going to come out here on the weekends and hike in the mountains. They're not looking for a big spread. So that, that it could actually be a higher end multifamily that's with the views. So that's it. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So one of the things that came out of the council retreat, which I feel like is an important element that we definitely could take a look at, is the importance of the silo granary and its visual kind of identity, and that they wanted to make sure that we took into account not allowing height, like maybe having a tiered system where heights could be lower in a radius of that and then could get higher, so as to preserve kind of that view corridor of the granary. Is that what y'all call it? Okay. The silos is down in Waco, Texas, right? So the granary, and I think that I gave the example of the Space Needle, that's what the city of Seattle's done. Like when you come in on a ferry, you can really see that skyline where the buildings around the Space Needle are subordinate to it in height. And then as you transition, south from the Space Needle, the heights are. So an idea like that, they seemed very supportive of us looking at something like that. And so, yeah, so Travis just thought maybe I should mention that to see what your guys' thoughts are on that. Yes.
What about kind of tighter standards about what your building has to look like? Is that kind of where we're going with this? Not like a Leavenworth, everything's going to look like it came out of a, not a Bavarian theme, but maybe an agrarian theme or something, you know what I'm saying? Like to keep people feeling open and farmlandish.
So, and I mean, and this is just what's in current code right now, but in our downtown zones, we have the FAR, for the floor area ratio, and how you can kind of increase that is it's incentivized. You get bonuses and things, and some of those things are like landscaping or open. You provide kind of the community space with your development, and by doing so, you can build out the property a little bit more, or you can get more square footage for actual usable space. So I mean, you could in theory apply that same type of thing. So it's like if you incorporate landscaping, and I know some jurisdictions have done this, where if you provide maybe your open space on the top floor through an outdoor patio, you can go a little bit higher, right? And so some of those things may help pencil out. But I think kind of in line with what Dennis was talking about, those are things we could consider, especially in our downtowns and such. So.
Well, I guess before I close my portion of the agenda, so thank you again for your attention. Is there anything else that you would like Travis and I to know before you continue on for the rest of your agenda? Anything else? And of course, as you know where we're at. You know where he's at. I'm only here 2 days a week, but I'm with him 2 days a week, and you know where he's at. You can always let us know if something else comes to mind.
Well, I don't know how this fits in, but I miss all of the trees in Minnesota, where there would be 3-story apartment complexes, and they'd be quite large. There would be large green corridors with trees and usually a little pond or something. And so you'd look out from your balcony, even if you're in a small apartment, you see nature, and that it makes all the difference, I think, for your well-being and everything. Yep. Yeah. And also it direct correlation, the more trees you have, the lower the crime and all kinds of other wonderful hidden spiritual benefits.
Thank you very much. It made us think about a lot of things again. Okay. I don't see any general business left. And a director's report, anything other than? Don't even want to make anything up for it.
Vegas. So
Oh, yes.
she's working at a conference. So, yeah.
All right. Is there anything for the good of the order? Members? Okay. We thank you for giving us so much time to visit. We're all worn out by now. Yeah. So, all right. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, any objection? I would say no. Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight.